Next technique, you can actually perform flex the knee, lateral rotate, like this. Just ask permission to get up on the table then. You can compress it like this. And if you need to, you can compress the side of the knee and the hip. Just do different areas. Or the adductor region, compress that area. And if you want a little bit more stretch, bring it up as much as you can too. And perform that. So especially if they have groin injuries, groin problems. Remember, if they do actually have any of those kind of problems, perform rest, ice, compression, elevation. Try not to do any stretching in the first 48 to 72 hours during an actual injury. Next technique, bring it here, cup the heel, perform dorsiflexion here, and bring it over. And if you need to, if they're cheating, you can push it down on the quad then. Okay, next technique is compressing the quad and bringing it out. Okay, remember before we did the hamstring stretch like this, but now we're going to rotate it out to get that stretch. You can also perform adduction, just right at the knee region, put your hip there, and just walk the leg up there. Is that stretching? Okay, so they can just maintain and hold that. And again, all these kind of stretches will be held for longer in the real world. Okay. Okay. Next technique, bring it over here. I'm going to use my arm as a lever. So I'm going to bring it down like this if you need to get that stretch in that region then. Next technique, I'll come over here for the glute region. I'm going to just have them lift up a little bit. Put your fist right underneath the glute region. And then just have it relax in your hand. And try to push up and push the quad down at the same time then. And slowly relax. Next technique, you can actually pull up right in the transverse abdominis region. Compress the hip and pull up. It'll stretch that way. You can also pull up on the glute region and kind of rotate the leg out to get that kind of stretch too. Okay, next technique, you can actually bring the legs off the table, like this, and like this, and rotate it out. And if you want to do an active assisted stretch, what you actually do is you have them hold on to the ankle. So you just do one at a time if you need to. So if they need a little bit extra pressure, you push it down in that region too. That's a really good stretch there. Okay, now bring it back to neutral. Okay, next technique, what we're going to do is we're going to have her slide her hips over to the side of the table, but her head in the same area, just so they feel more comfortable. So the hips right over here. So then you can just make it straight, compress the hip, and bring it down to get a good stretch that way. And you can also rotate it if you need to too, to get that stretch in that region. And this actually works with the psoas region, also with the quads, stretching out that region. And the psoas, that's the main postural muscle in that region. And you can bring it back to neutral. Okay, next technique. Here, you can rotate it, and then compress in these regions. And again, all these stretches are not for everybody, but just giving you different opportunities for different types of stretches. Okay, next technique, you can bring it up, you can bring both of them up. Okay, this leg over here like this. What you can do is you can compress right here, or you can compress the hip and then bring it over this way then too. Okay, next technique. You can flex the knee. We're going to perform dorsiflexion of the ankle. And just compress down. Okay, again, if you need to, you can compress the hip and perform the same stretch then in those regions. Okay, next technique, you can actually take both legs and compress different areas.